New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring. There we go. I'm going to get my stuff together here this morning, folks, and press the right buttons. Good morning. Welcome to the Science of Mind and Spirit Saturday morning conversation series. So grateful that you are with us. Thanks for being here on a Saturday morning. Morning, Shay. Good to see you. Good morning, Wayne. Good to see you. Anyone else that's out there watching, feel free to chat along, chime along, ask your questions, interact. Welcome to leave a comment in the chat box. All right. Hey, let's get started by number one, saying a big thank you to Rev Dr Mark Gilbert for last week's talk and last week's conversation on what the mystics have taught. Great conversation. I watched every minute of it. So if you missed that one and didn't have a chance to catch up on it, well, you can catch up on it anytime over on our YouTube channel. Just look for the playlist Science of Mind, Saturday morning Science of Mind and Spirit Conversation Series. Long name, great program, and I love that we get to share this with so many. With the team that comes together, and each year is a little bit different of a team that comes together to bring this program. And so a big shout out to everybody that makes this possible. And next week's Reverend Barbara Jean, we'll talk about that near the end of the program. This week, however, we're going to talk about the phases of the subjective mind. This is chapter 21 in the Science of Mind textbook. It starts on page 347. Now, if you have a copy of the textbook, you're welcome to follow along and join us with this. We are rapidly approaching the conclusion of this book, by the way, as well. Next week is Finding the Christ with, as I said, Reverend Barbara Jean. I'll be back in 2 weeks with Immortality, and then we do a couple of weeks on the general summary of the book, and then we're done with the book. That's where this program jumps over, and what we start doing is we start to look at different articles and resources from the Science of Mind Archive and Library Foundation. And so you partner with them to highlight and focus in on some other New Thought, Science of Mind specific, often Ernest Holmes specific teachings and writings and articles and such, just not stuff from the Science of Mind textbook. We're just about done. Look at this. Middle of the month and middle of late June, early July, and we're almost done with the entire reading of the book, if you've been reading through with us. All right, so let's jump in. This is on page 347. Holmes starts, we have already seen that what we call the soul is really the subjective part of us. We wish to look a little further into some of the phenomena of the soul. And so right off the bat, we recognize if we're looking at the soul, if we remember our science of mind teaching symbol, the top third is spirit, the middle is the soul. That's the subjective part of our being, and then the body is at the bottom, or the objective. So this is the subjective, and that's what we're talking about today. The objective, the stuff in our lives, and we can always get more stuff, but the stuff we get is related to our subjective mind. We're going to get to that as we go along as well. Please feel free to ask questions. If you're watching live, you're welcome to ask questions or leave a comment as we go. As appropriate, I'll work those into my sharing here today. Okay, so Holmes continues. We do not have two minds, but we do have a dual aspect of mentality in what we call the objective and subjective states of consciousness. So two states of consciousness. The objective mind is the part of the mentality which functions consciously. It is the part of us which is self-knowing, and without it, we would not be self-conscious entities. Our conscious mind is the place where we consciously live and are aware that we are living. This is spirit. Remember, spirit goes in the top third there. Our subjective mind is our mental emanation in universal subjectivity. It is our individual use of mental law. We certainly do not wish to deviate from that which psychology teaches about the mind of the human in its conscious, subconscious, or subjective states. We merely wish to add this. Here's the important part. The reason we have a subjective mind is that subjectivity already exists in the universe prior to our use of it, and where we use it. The subjectivity, God, it forms around us as a subjective personification of ourselves, which is a result of the action and a reaction of our thought. So the subjective mind is a reaction of our thought, and it is a personification of who we are. The subjective mind is the seat of memory and contains remembrance of everything that has ever happened to our outer experience. I like to draw a parallel to any of our social media platforms. Now, there is no way to go that I know of to go back in Facebook 10 years from where we are now. Not easily. There's memories, their memory function and other things. But if you want to go back and look at what your daily posts were, well, it's not that easy. But they're there. Somewhere on a server somewhere, those memories, those images, those memes, those comments, the things you put out are still there. It is the collective experience of our lives. It's all still there, every part of it. Now, some of it we never access. There are memories we never access. And yet, if you look, I am positive there are memories from your childhood that you can access at any time, or that sometimes just show up whether we're thinking about it or not. So we're going to use this concept of our social media platforms as we go along here today to take a look at how, and again, I think these are the way social media works today is a great example of our subjective mind, because it gives us what we want as well. It gives us what we're paying attention to. YouTube is great on this. You watch a video about cats, and you're going to get a whole bunch of suggestions on how to watch more cat videos or any other topic. So I want to jump into the second section. We're on page 248, because what Holmes starts with is, now these are the different phenomena of our subjective life. So we're going to talk about collective consciousness. We're going to talk about inspiration. We're going to talk about the mental atmosphere. We're going to talk about trusting our thoughts, stream of consciousness, and the spirit of prophecy. These are all the subsections of this chapter. And the first one is, quote, race suggestions. Now, in most circles that I travel in, we have changed that term. And if you hear race mind or race thought or race suggestion, when this was written, we didn't have quite the same understanding of how the word race had been used and would be used. And so it creates an awful lot of confusion right now when we use the term race, especially talking about our subjective mind. So we changed that term, and most people I interact with, we now call it collective consciousness. This would be our collective suggestions. So collective suggestion is a very, very real thing, and each individual carries around with them and has written into our mentality many impressions which never consciously thought of or experienced. When we realize that the individual subjectivity is their use of the one subjective mind, we shall see that a subjective unity is maintained between all people, and that individual mentalities who are in sympathetic vibration with each other more or less mingle and receive suggestions from each other. This is the meaning of mental influence, which is indeed a very real thing. Now, I don't want to get all bogged down in all this. This is some of this language. It takes some study. This chapter is one where it's one of those ones where I think moving through it a few times is really kind of important. Because again, it doesn't just he doesn't use a lot of great examples in here. He uses a few that I wouldn't use, and a couple that we're going to talk about that are really, really good. So here's part of our point. Just as each person, place, or thing has a subjective atmosphere or remembrance, so each town, city, or nature has its individual atmosphere. Some towns are bustling with life and action, while others seem dead. Most people would talk about this as culture. The culture of a city, the vibe, and I am sure that you have had these experiences, because it's part of our nature, it's part of who we are, it's part of the universal oneness. We have those hits that we walk into someplace and it's just like, no, can't do this. I don't like the vibe in here. I don't like the energy in here. Other places, obviously, we walk in and we want to stay forever. Remember a couple years back now, I was on a mountain bike ride with a friend, and we'd been out riding mountain bike, had a great day. We were out a little bit later than we anticipated, and it was getting late. We were supposed to be home for dinner, but we weren't going to make it, so decided to stop off and grab something to eat. And I don't want to mention the name of the business or anything, because when we walked in, I had that hit. I heard the voice. I felt it in my body temple. Everything in my subjective life said, "Don't eat here." Now, I don't know that there would be anything wrong with the food. I'm not saying that there were anything wrong with the building. I'm not saying that there was bad juju there, or that there were malevolent, that there were demons there, or any of that kind of stuff. I just know that in that moment, I walked through the threshold of that building, and every part of me, every part of my subjective body, my subjective mind said, don't do this. Don't eat here. And I sat out on the deck while my friend had something to eat. And even as he was eating, I was just like, nope. He offered to buy me dinner. I was like, not about money. I have an intuitive sense that I should not be here and I should not eat here. So I didn't. We catch, and this is my invitation to each of us today. There's a phrase, I forget where it is in the book, that keeps jumping forward, and that is, anyone may become a revealer of truth that lives in a close indwelling contact with the divine. And our subjective mind, our subjective body is part of all that. There is a tendency, this is on page 349 at the bottom of this section, there is a tendency on the part of all of us to reproduce the accumulated subjective experiences of the human collective. Now that in itself, well, some might look at that and say, well, that's a little scary. There is a tendency on the part of all of us to reproduce the accumulated subjective experiences of the human collective. But a tendency doesn't mean we have to. So when everybody's going one way, it's easy to go that same way. When everybody's cheering for the same team, it's easy to cheer for that team. When everybody's going the same way, but that's the tendency. That is not the law. It is not the only way. We can move against the tendencies. And that is honestly what I think is happening right now in many places on planet Earth. We have the collective consciousness is shifting, and it is shifting away from the old belief systems. It is shifting away from the collective experiences. It's shifting away from reproducing those collective experiences. Next section, subjective mind and inspiration. And at the bottom, last paragraph on this page, 349. Anyone contacting the subjective side of the collective mentality and with the ability to bring it to the surface will have at their disposal an emotional knowledge that many lifetimes of hard study could not accumulate. But if one had to surrender their individuality in the process, it would be better to remain ignorant. There is, of course, a much deeper seat of knowledge than the subjective mind, which is the spirit, and direct contact with the spirit is illumination. So what he's saying is every one of us has the opportunity, the ability, the potential to be in a closer relationship with our subjective mind, to listen more to our intuition, to push against the tendencies of the collective consciousness, or perhaps go with them, but ultimately to be aware of these things and to be conscious of how they're operating in our lives. Everybody take a breath. It's going to get juicy. There is, of course, a much deeper seat of knowledge than the subjective mind, which is the spirit. Direct contact with the spirit is illumination. Now he continues, mental atmosphere. Each person has a mental atmosphere which is the result of all that they have thought, said, and done, and consciously or unconsciously perceived. So, and remember, we can receive impressions unconsciously from the collective. Mental atmosphere is very real, and it is this subtle influence which constitutes the power of personal attraction. For personal attraction has but little to do with looks. It goes much deeper, and it is almost entirely subjective. This will explain our likes and dislikes for those with whom we come in daily contact. We meet some only to return away without a word, while others are at once drawn toward and without any apparent reason. This is the result of their mental atmosphere or thought vibration. How many times have you met someone and within moments you just knew, oh, we're going to get along great. Oh, we're going to be good friends. And how many times have you met people and within moments you're just like, nope, 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 nope. Now remember, this is a collective experience over your lifetime, and it is a tendency. It does not need to change. Not long ago, maybe 6 or 8 months ago now, someone showed up in my life and we had a conversation, and my initial hit, if you will, everything said, nope, 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 sorry, not in alignment. The vibe wasn't there. We didn't jive. Now, the interesting part is this gentleman went away and did some inner work, and I don't want to say went away, excuse me. He engaged upon some deeper inner work and studied with some people around his own experience of life. And through a unique series of events, we ended up at another event together. And this time, my intuition, my subjective state was more open to hearing what he had to say, to diving into what he was trying to share. I learned something. So these are tendencies. They don't have to be forever. Just because somebody might initially rub us the wrong way does not mean that we need to throw them out of our lives forever. Now, if there are occasions, right? There are reasons to remove someone from our life forever. And part of that is in creating our mental atmosphere. I encourage people every day, it seems. How do we build that sense, mental atmosphere that is supportive? Through prayer, through affirmations, through our daily practices. We build that sense, that mental atmosphere, that when something happens, our conscious response, our objective response is more along the lines of, oh, well, isn't that interesting? What are we going to do with that? Or we tend towards the right on, there it is. There's what I've been trying to do. There's the manifestation I've been asking for. Regardless of how we approach it, regardless of the incident itself, what's important is how we approach it, how we perceive it. Okay, next section, tuning in on thought. So, for the most part, in science of mind, my experience over the last 20 years has been that we don't talk all that much about psychics. And some communities will have psychics come in and they'll do an event, and I know psychics that are great religious scientists as well, and I know some that aren't. I know some that use their skills, not always to benefit the people they're working with. Let's put it that way. But again, these are tendencies. It doesn't mean somebody is going to stay that way their entire lives. Holmes talks about it here, and he says, thought transference or telepathy is such a commonly known fact that it is not our purpose to do other than discuss it briefly. I don't know about that, but because I think there's a bunch in this next page or so that really, for me, speaks to how this all works. So let's get into it. Telepathy is the act of reading subjective thoughts. So remember, the collective thoughts are all around. They create a mental atmosphere. We cannot help but be influenced by that mental atmosphere. We cannot we cannot help but be touched by that mental atmosphere. So in my opinion, we might as well work with it, right? Telepathy is the act of reading subjective thought or of receiving conscious thought from another without audible words being spoken. But there must be a mental tuning in, so to speak, just as there must be in radio. Now, I like that second part, right? I like it all, but receiving conscious thought from another without audible words being spoken, if we tune in. Parents and children do this all the time. Husbands and wives do this all the time. Friends can do this if everybody's in alignment. If everybody, and studies and scientific research has proven that this works. That we can tune into the conscious thoughts of another when everybody's intending that. It's just like radio. We're surrounded by all sorts of vibrations, and if we wish to catch any of them distinctly, we must tune in. The bottom of that paragraph, it is only when the instrument is properly adjusted to some individual vibration that a clear message may be received. Now, to me, here's where we're going to slip into my favorite spiritual subject around spiritual practice, and that's the practice of visioning. Now, visioning was not around in Dr. Holmes's time, at least in that term, in that terminology. For the most part, we credit Reverend Dr. Michael Bernard Beckwith with developing the life visioning process, and I think in many ways he was tapping into much of what we taught and just what appeared to be a new form, and yet was always there. It is only when the instrument, me, is properly adjusted to some individual vibration that a clear message may be received. And in visioning, what I'm doing is I'm tuning my instrument to listen for the highest vision for my life. I tune my instrument to listen for what am I becoming in the world. I tune my instrument to listen for what is it that wants to be released? What is it that I am to embrace? I tune my instrument to listen for what is mine to do in this. What is my activity? What are my action steps here? I tune the instrument to wonder and question what other information, what else needs to be known? What am I not catching here? We can do the same. We can say the same about our meditation practice. We're tuning the instrument to listen. And that's why, for many, guided meditations work so well. Because a trained facilitator, a qualified facilitator, is helping you to tune your subjective mind. By tuning out, how many times have you ever heard that in a meditation? Tuning out the outside world, turning away from the hustle and the bustle of our day, turning away for everything that brought us to where we are, we have a better, clear instrument that's ready to be tuned in. Well, perhaps it's an inner child experience. Perhaps it's a conversation with our higher self. Perhaps it's a conversation with the cells in our body temple. We tune in to a specific idea, vibration, frequency, prayer. Prayer is another great example of where we tune in. Okay, now a little lower on that page 351, some have the ability to tune in on thought and read it more or less accurately. So here's a difference. Am I tuning in on the idea of perfect health? Am I tuning in to the highest vision for myself? Or am I tuning in to what you are thinking right now? Am I tuning into the vibration that says, this is all hooey? Or am I tuning into the vibration of what you're thinking, where your conscious mind is going, where your objective mind is going? That's what we call a psychic. Someone who is tuning in to your mental atmosphere and able to read that mental atmosphere in such a way that they can access the collective consciousness of your life. And that's how psychics come to know, can catch the name of your mother or your father or someone in your life, perhaps someone that's made a transition or someone that's going through something, because they are first and foremost, they are in your thoughts. Some have the ability to tune in on thoughts and read it more or less accurately. These people we call psychics. But all people are really psychic, since all have a soul or a subjective mind. What we really mean is that a psychic or medium is one who has the ability to objectify that which is subjective. We have the ability to take that subjective atmosphere, the thoughts, the influences, the vibrations that are coming to us, and speak them out and describe them in an objectified manner, to bring to the surface of conscious thought that which lies below the threshold of the outer mind. The medium reads the book of remembrance, and it is marvelous how far-reaching the book may be. It works. This stuff works when we work it. Now, what happens is far too many people have been told you couldn't be that, or that it's not real. There are charlatans in any profession. And people have run into and had experiences, again, with those that use these technologies, this understanding, this wisdom, for their own personal gain rather than for the benefit of all humanity. Our invitation, if you will, is to learn how you can use this stuff for the benefit of all humanity. The bottom of the page: since the universal subjectivity is a unity, it follows that all of the pictures exist at any point and every point within it. Consequently, we make contact at the point of our own subjective mind every incident which has ever transpired on the planet. Back to our social media analogy. We may even see a picture which was enacted 2,000 years ago. Each person in their objective state is a distinct and individualized center of universal mind. So back to our social media. We tune in to other people's memories and images, and now in today's age, the algorithm helps us to do that. In the early stages, we just did that based on who we wanted to know more about. What frequency, what station did we want to tune into? The guy that shares positivity and love, or the guy that's constantly complaining, moaning, and groaning about life? Each person in their objective state, what I put on Facebook, is a distinct and individualized center of the universal mind. But in our subjective state, in our stream of consciousness, or at our rate of vibration, each, you, I, are universal. In our subjective state, we are universal. Whenever and wherever any individual contacts another upon the subjective side of life, If he is a psychic, if they objectify subjectivity, he may see a thought form of another person, but it does not necessarily follow that we would really be seeing the person. Again, there is always self-choice in all of this. And so the psychic can tune in and follow logic from what they do see to where it might be going. And we're going to talk about that in another moment or two. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the client, if you will, the person that is being read, still has choice to change their actions. Shay, this is what we all do. This is what we do when working with clients, tuning into their subconscious and conscious minds for the purpose of healing. And what Science of Mind will teach you, what Science of Mind specifically teaches us, is that we don't really need to tune into their conscious mind all that much. We can tune into the subjective and help them to see without saying, oh, this is what's going on. And it's one of those places where a really good practitioner differs from a psychic, because a psychic is going to say, oh, I see this and that means this and you should do this. Where a practitioner helps us to recognize what can be seen and helps the client to see those things themselves. So the client follows the path of logic to determine what it is that's going to be best for them. More on that at another time. So let's talk about streams of consciousness. This is the next section. Each being or individual entity in mind is known by the name they bear and by the vibration which emanates. For while we're all in one mind or spirit, each has a separate and individualized personality. Again, we have studies that vibrationally you enter a room before you get there. And who you are goes before you. Who you are goes before you. Your essence, your consciousness, your vibration enters a room before you ever do. Now, the difference is the people in the room have no idea or rarely do. Sometimes they do. Sometimes you can be in a room and recognize something just changed here. Each person in their subjective state is a distinct and individualized center in universal mind. Each being an individual entity in mind is known by the name we bear. Drop to the bottom of the paragraph. Time is only the measure of an experience, and space of itself is not apart from, but is in mind. So time, we've heard this said in Science of Mind. I've heard it said for years now. There is no time or space in the mind of God. There is no time or space in the mind of God. Now, what is the mind of God? It is the universal subjective. Are we a part of that universal subjective? Go like this. Yes, we are. That's what we've been talking about. Our individual subjective is part of the universal subjective. If the universal subjective has access to all knowledge at any time from any time, then our universal subjective has that as well. If we train it, if we create the mental atmosphere, if we stay in a close indwelling contact with the divine. Trust you're with me. So, top of page 353. A psychic can enter the stream of thought, and anyone whose vibration they can mentally contact, whether that person be in the flesh or out of it. And since we are all psychic, all having a soul element, we are all doubtless communicating with each other to the degree that we sympathetically vibrate toward each other. Again, I just know I'm going to like this person. We're going to get along great. I say that so often because we're communicating with each other and we have a sympathetic vibration towards each other. We do not have the ability to objectify psychic impressions. and ordinarily they never come to the surface. So read this again. A psychic can enter the stream of thought of anyone whose vibrations they can mentally contact. If you're closed, if you shut down, if you're not mentally available to any of this, a psychic's not going to contact you. A psychic's not going to be able to reach in and contact. You have to be a willing participant in it. That they can mentally contact. And since we're all psychic, all having the soul element, we are all doubtless communicating with each other. But we do not have the ability to take what we learn and make it into an object and make it into a thing. We do not have the ability to objectify psychic impressions, and ordinarily they never come to the surface. However, they are there just the same. At the bottom of that paragraph, any psychic power which can be used while in a normal state of mind is harmless and helpful. By this we mean one that can be used while one is in a conscious state. Any psychic power that is used while we are in a conscious state can be helpful, harmless and helpful. However, that does imply that harm can be done if we are attempting to use these tools, these technologies, these gifts to those that are not in a conscious state. Okay, so let's jump on to 354 at the top. This is the way in which clairvoyant vision operates. The continuation of the past through the present into the future is a movement of causation passing from cause to effect. And because the movement is first set in motion in a field of mind which is purely subjective, both cause and effect will exist at any point during the sequence of the movement. The clairvoyant vision then, contacting at any point, even before the final outcome, will see the final outcome. So what he's saying is that the clairvoyant can touch into these things and take what we have and be able to see a perception, an idea of how it ends. And often can see exactly how it ends, even though we haven't yet traveled the road to get to the end. You with me? We're not based in linear time. We're not required. Linear time is not required to jump from what we know to what is the eventual result. There is nothing fatalistic about it. A thing can appear to be fatalistic without necessarily being so. This we should understand because the human mind in its ignorance has created great psychic laws for itself. Therefore, if one has been told anything in the way of a prophecy which is negative, your husband's going to leave you, the bank's going to foreclose. If any psychic ever tells you something a prophecy which is negative, it should be directly refuted, because that negation exists in the realm of subjective causation, not spiritual causation. So, I just feel it. It's going to be a bad day. No. It's going to be a great day. You're going to, again, I get this feeling that I shouldn't go to the bank today because it's going to be robbed while I'm there. No, get rid of that thought. Get rid of, I'm just not worthy of a relationship. No, get rid of that thought. And this is one of those places that isn't often talked about in the science of mind anymore, but the use of negations in our prayer work. I explain it this way. In our prayer work, if we come to a point where the mind, because what we're doing is we're giving our mind a new subjective atmosphere. And if in that subjective atmosphere, the mind tries to go to, this won't work, I'm not good enough, we immediately negate that idea. If a limitation arises in your prayer, in your subjective work, don't leave it there. Tell your subjective that that's not the truth, that that's not how this works, and reaffirm what it is, the mental atmosphere that you want to work on. So you're praying for an increase in financial abundance, and your mind says, yeah, but you can't handle money. You don't know what to do with money. No, that's not the truth. There is that within the subjective that knows, and I may tap into that and make that the mental atmosphere, make that the belief pattern, make that the reality of my life. Both cause and effect will exist at any point during the sequence of the movement. Next paragraph. Therefore, if one has been told anything in the way of a prophecy which is negative, it should be directly refuted, because the negation exists in the realm of subjective causation. Next paragraph. Subjective mind can deduce only. It has no power of initiative or self-choice, and is compelled by its very nature to retain all the suggestions which it receives. And here is where Holmes comes back to our classic example and our greatest analogy of the seed, the soil, and the plant. Always the law maintains the individuality of the seed as it creates the plant. Never does it contradict the right of the seed to be what it really is. Involved within the seed is the idea of the plant, as are also those lesser ideas which are to act as a medium between the seed and the plant. If we wish to see the plant in the creative soil or in the seed, the full and perfect idea of the plant must exist as a completed thing, else it would never be brought into manifestation. If we can't see the end, if we're not prophesizing how it ends, our seeds, our prayers are going to be ineffective or stunted. We have to be creating that mental atmosphere that says, I am abundant. There is an unlimited flow of financial good moving through and as my life at all times. And I draw from that one source. If you wish to have a great relationship, we have to have that mental atmosphere that I am lovable and loving, that all the various aspects, we have to tune into our own mental creation of what that is. We have to see the end just as we see it from the present, from this moment. Top of 355. Thoughts going into the subjective are like seeds. They act through the creative medium of mind and must have within themselves the full power to develop and to express. But how could they express unless they were already known to mind? They could not. So mind must view the thought as already completed in the thing, and mind must also contain the avenue through which the idea is to be expressed. Every thought sets the fulfillment of its desire in motion in mind, and mind sees the thing as already done. And this is why when we have a bad thought, it doesn't immediately happen, because the mind overrides and says no. I know many, many people that have had a thought of suicide and never made an attempt. I know even more people that at one time or another had a thought that they wished somebody would die, and that didn't happen because the mind overrode the thought. And somewhere in the mind went, no, 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 not doing that, not going to happen. Count me out. Mental tendencies set in motion cast their shadows before, and a psychic often sees the complete manifestation of an idea before it's had time to materialize in the objective world. There's the key. We have time to see it complete manifestation of an idea before the idea has had time to materialize in the objective. This is also why some will pray and imagine and see themselves with a gold brick in their hand and it doesn't happen. This is what constitutes the average spirit of prophecy. For prophecy is the reading of subjective tendencies and seeing them as already accomplished facts. The subjective mind can deduce only, but its power of logic and sequence appear to be perfect. The prophet can take what they see and take an end point and logically connect the two. And that power is within each every one of us. It's within you, and you can use it. And that's the beauty I find in this book. That is the greatness of it. I know we're running out of time, but I want to read this last paragraph. A similar thing takes place when a psychic exercises the spirit of prophecy. Because they are getting into their own subjective contact with the condition and simply interpreting what comes to them, but this is the logical, deductive, conclusive power of their subjective thought, seeing a thing completed by first seeing a tendency set in motion and computing the time it will take to complete it. There are but few, however, who possess any reliable spirit of prophecy. And there is where I also will argue, I would argue with Holmes, given the chance. I think in his day, yes, there are few. And I think as more and more people practice this philosophy, as more and more people make this philosophy, the science of mind, new thought, a way of life, then we see more that are able to accurately prophesize, that are more accurately able to see the tendencies of the subjective, the collective subjective, and help to mold those. I'm reminded of the old analogy of a bucket of water. And we add a clean drop of water to a dirty bucket. And the first drop of water doesn't make the water any cleaner. And the 10th drop of water doesn't seem to make the water any cleaner. But by the 10,000th, the water is cleaner, seems cleaner. We must be adding seeds, drops of water to the collective subconscious. And we do that through our practices. And in today's age, we let those practices inform our objective experience. Whether that experience is to vote, whether that experience is to get out in the streets and march, whether that experience is to stand on a soapbox and preach, whether that experience is to launch a podcast and tell the world the truth. I believe our work is to add those seeds to the subjective. I invite you to join us doing that. That's all I've got, folks. We're about run out of time here today. So I want to thank you for being with me. I want to thank you for being a part of what we're doing here on the New Thought Media Network. We're going to be back again on this program next week. As I said, Reverend Barbara Jean will be here. And I've already closed my book. What's our next chapter? Uh-oh. Let me come back. Here we go. Not the general summary, not immortality. Finding the Christ. That's it. Reverend Barbara Jean will be with us next week to find the Christ. I invite you to join us for that. And please, and join us for all the amazing programming here on New Thought Media Network. We would love to see you on some of our other programs. And feel free to reach out and say thank you to our organizational sponsors and individual donors. I want to do that right now before we wrap this up. So please don't go away. Stick around and learn just a little bit more about all the amazing organizations and individuals that are helping make this happen. Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring. Yes, thank you to all of our organizational sponsors and individual donors. If you'd like to learn more about how you can become part of the New Thought Media Network family, please head on over to our website, www.ntmedia.org. Click on the donate button, make it a monthly recurring donation, and we'll include your name or organization in our next thank you video. All right, folks, I'm Dr. Robert. I'm going to get out of here for now. However, we'll be back again. Reverend Barbara Jean will be back next week with more of the Saturday morning Science of Mind and Spirit conversation series. Thank you for being with us. Until next time, I wish you peace and richest blessings. Bye now.